All right, we're going to do a video regarding opening statements of two people. This is the joint House inquiry to the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks. And these two individuals are hidden behind a partition screen to protect their identity. The CIA case officer is Tom Wilshire, the former deputy chief of Alec Station, which is the Bin Laden Issue Station, which is a virtual station meant to collect information regarding Bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. And sitting next to him is a special agent, former special agent from the New York City Counterterrorism Joint Task Force Office in New York City, Steve Bongardt. Wilshire, he'll be speaking first. Steve Bongardt will follow up after him, and I'll provide additional commentary during the video.
Mr. Chairman, members and staff, I am a senior officer attached to the DCI's Counterterrorist Center, currently assigned to the FBI. From September 1998 until May 2001 as an operations manager, I was privileged to work alongside a group of extraordinary officers from the CIA, the FBI, and other agencies who were and remain committed to combating the threat posed by Bin Laden and those he has inspired. In May of 2001, I moved over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, where I have since worked as a CIA detailee in the Counterterrorism Division, a position in which I've also focused on the Bin Laden menace. I would like to read a short statement, and then the written version will be submitted for the record.
Thank you.
Before we begin, I would like to observe that even after 10 months of incredible effort by the U.S. military and others in Afghanistan, and by the agencies you see represented before you here today and others here and abroad, Al-Qaeda remains poised to strike again. What we say in this venue over the coming weeks will be closely followed by the very people who are just trying to destroy you, me, our families, and our way of life.
You know, that's the old adage, right? They're after us because they hate our freedoms. Meanwhile, the real statement about why they are attacking us was made throughout the preceding years up to September 11, 2001. It was basically our foreign policy. And it wasn't a hidden agenda either. Bin Laden, in his statements with the media from 1994 to 2010, he basically stated that the United States foreign policy is the reason why Al-Qaeda continues to attack the United States. But they won't tell you that, because that'll really get you to concentrate on the issues of U.S. foreign policy, which is basically an unmitigated disaster.
I want to stress, speaking on behalf of those still carrying the battle to Al-Qaeda inside Afghanistan and out, that we do not and cannot for the foreseeable future view this group as anything, and view this group and its emulators and sympathizers as anything less dangerous than they were at this time last year. While we have an obligation to ensure that our flaws are identified and corrected, we must also take great care that we not educate the enemy while we are at it. With those comments, I now turn to the specific topic we have been invited here to review. Your staff has laid out the basic facts, so I won't repeat them in detail, but I'd like to walk through the most significant elements in summary form. In late 1999, the U.S. counterterrorist community launched a global effort aimed at disrupting terrorist operations we knew were being planned for the millennium turnover, and that we suspected would carry over into the end of the Muslim month of Ramadan, which was to occur in early January 2000. Dozens of terrorists and terrorist support nodes were disrupted. Both CIA and the FBI, as well as other members of the intelligence community, surged large numbers of officers for this effort, and they worked round the clock through roughly mid-January through 15 January 2000. During that heightened alert, the CIA, the FBI, and other members of the intelligence community were also working over data they had shared relevant to the Nairobi and Dar es Salaam embassy bombings that had occurred in August 1998.
Now, incidentally enough, in the embassy bombings, the CIA and the FBI basically did share intelligence regarding that operation. But that wasn't the case with September 11, 2001. And you've seen in the previous videos of mine where I critique basically the CIA's complete malfeasance regarding their insistence on not sharing data with the FBI or the State Department regarding Al-Qaeda operatives inside the United States, or them possessing dual US visas. And, you know, I just did a podcast based on the testimony of, or the inquiry of one of the Joint House Inquiry Panel members, Carl Levin, and where he interviews the CIA, numerous officials from the CIA who testified, and all gave different answers as to why they didn't, and including that they did. So they basically didn't tell the whole truth.
In December 1999, this intelligence provided a kind of a tuning fork that buzzed when two individuals reportedly planning a trip to Kuala Lumpur were linked indirectly to a support element that we suspected had played a role with the Africa bombers. A CTC officer, noting the linkage, set in motion a complex series of operations aimed at determining their identity, their contacts, and ideally what they were doing. The operation succeeded in its first phase. Within a very short period of time, we learned the name of one of the travelers, Khalid al-Mithar. We learned where they were staying and the name of several of their local contacts. We were unable to complete—
in which none of that information was passed on to the FBI or the NSA or the State Department. And yet all these competing agencies were basically depending on one another for different information that they're not privy to. With the NSA, it's signals intelligence. With the CIA, it's human intelligence. And the FBI is human intelligence and some signals intelligence. But primarily, they all work counterterrorism and terrorism abroad. But the CIA and the NSA are not as, it's not their expertise. The FBI basically is much more, for example, the New York City Counterterrorism Office is probably at that time, before 9/11, the best agency in the world regarding Islamic fundamentalism. And that's because of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and the assassination of Rabbi Meir Kahane by El Said Nosser, the Abu Nidal organization. So they have quite a history regarding how to deal with Arab fundamental or Islamic fundamentalism. The CIA basically doesn't cater to specifically Islamic fundamentalism, but they are aware of it, but they don't have many Arab linguists. And their counterterrorism office was basically not as formidable as the New York City Joint Terrorism Task Force, which later became the I-49 unit.
The second phase of the operation, however, we did not learn the identities of the other participants in the meeting at the time, and that were unable to determine and still do not know what they discussed during that meeting.
Allegedly. Now, this could be true. The NSA, however, probably heard what they were saying. That's because they had a wiretap active at the home of Ahmed al-Hada, who owns a house in the capital of Yemen, Sana'a, in which Khalid al-Mithar was staying, because he is the son-in-law to Ahmed al-Hada, because he marries his daughter, Hoda al-Hada.
While the meeting was in progress, via CIA officers detailed to the FBI, CTC kept the FBI advised of developments via verbal briefings. As you know, for a number of years, the FBI has had agents and analysts working integrally with CTC, including in the CTC's bin Laden element. And CIA officers, in turn, have also served in various components of the FBI, including also in the bin Laden unit of the FBI headquarters. Part of the job on either side, especially during moments of crisis, is to provide verbal briefs on the fly because before shifting attention to the next facet of the crisis. We prefer to document significant transfers of information, both to assure ourselves that it was passed and also to create a detailed record for our own operations officers and analysts who at a later date draw on such data to do a variety of tasks. In this case, CTC did not formally document to the FBI the conversations between the CIA referents and the FBI supervisors they briefed. CTC did note in a cable to the field that Al-Midhar's passport information had been passed to the FBI. But to date, we have been unable to.
I want to stop right there. That's not true. They withheld that information from the FBI. Although at the time, the committee doesn't know that. They're just going by the testimonies of the CIA. Whether they found out later or not, I couldn't tell you. But it's common knowledge now they did share that information with the FBI. And basically, Steve Bongardt, sitting next to him, later testifies to the fact that the FBI agents were working as liaison officers at the Counterterrorism Center in the CIA, basically were not privy to all the information. And one of them was that Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, who both later would be participants in the hijacking of Flight 77, which crashed in the Pentagon, had dual U.S. visas. That information wasn't known to the FBI until August of 2001, 16 months later, from what the CIA found out in January of 2000.
Confirm either passage or receipt of the information, so we cannot say what the exact details were that were passed. As the operations unfolded, a piece of data that in hindsight turned out to be critical revealed Al-Midhar's passport information and that he had earlier obtained a visa to the United States. Under ideal conditions, that passport data should have been provided to the State Department's tip-off program, which is designed to help keep terrorists from entering the U.S. from abroad.
Right, and the CIA knew this, right? And they still didn't tell the State Department, right, about the dual U.S. visas to two men who had links to the 1998 East Africa bombings and later the USS Cole bombing. And this is all coming out. It's all public knowledge. It's coming from the data transcribed that was collected by the CIA and the FBI. So basically, this is not speculation. It's known. But they still didn't tell the FBI for reasons unknown.
At this point, both Al-Midhar and his companion, who would turn out to be another hijacker, Nawaf al-Hazmi, had their visas. Later in early March.
By the way, they got their visas at a U.S. Embassy consul in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Later, in early March 2000, long after the dust had settled in Malaysia, information surfaced indicating that Al-Midhar's partner was named Nawaf al-Hazmi. In early March, CIA also received information indicating that al-Hazmi had booked a flight that terminated in Los Angeles on 15 January 2000. Again, the new information on al-Hazmi was not disclosed.
And that information was still held by the FBI, even though CIA knew this. The CIA knew that after they left the meeting in Malaysia, they go get on a plane, travel to the United States. The FBI still is not aware of what's going on because the CIA withheld this information from the FBI intentionally.
Disseminated. After the October 2000 bombing of the USS Cole, the Al-Midhar and al-Hazmi data resurfaced when the FBI learned that an individual alleged to have been a key planner of the Cole attack had been in Southeast Asia at the same time as the Malaysia meeting.
All public knowledge by the CIA, who didn't tell anybody.
This raised the possibility that the planner of that Cole attack had been at the meeting. The person I'm discussing, it was this person, Khalid.
Khalid, who goes by the name Walid Ben Attash, currently in Guantanamo Bay, awaiting trial for the 9/11 attacks, which probably will never come, is known by the CIA as Khalid. They don't know his real name, allegedly. Anyway, that's what's heard on the wiretaps of the NSA. Someone by the name of Khalid. Now, this is huge because Khalid is the connection between the embassy bombings, the USS Cole, and September 11, 2001, allegedly. But he's at the meeting. We know that because the CIA asked Malaysian authorities to take photographs of the people coming out of the condominium between September 5th and 7th. And they took a number of pictures. Allegedly, there was video. Whether they saw or heard something in the meeting, I don't know. But they got photographs, and they were faxed to the Bin Laden Issue Station. Tom Wilshire was the former deputy chief of the Bin Laden Issue Station. He was the #2 man, while Richard Blee was #1. He's the head chief of the Alec Station. And basically, these photographs in which the NSA the NSA heard about this in a wiretap in the Yemen hub. They told the CIA and the FBI about this meeting in the hopes of them getting photographs, because they don't do human intelligence. So the CIA asked Malaysian authorities to take photographs. They took video and photographs. Whether that was passed to the CIA, I don't know, but at least the photographs were of Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, Walid bin Atash Khalad. This information was not even passed to the NSA, who told the CIA about the meeting, or the FBI, or the State Department. Nobody knows but the CIA. When did the photographs come to fruition? After the attacks of September 11th. In fact, that afternoon, it was shown by a CIA analyst to an FBI New York City Counterterrorism Joint Terrorism Task Force I-49 unit, Ali Soufan. He shows him the photographs. Why did he show them there? And why just after the attacks?
It was mentioned in the previous testimony. At the time I wrote this, did not have the full declassified version. Seeking to develop more information on that hypothesis that Khalad had been at the meeting, and related to other information linking some coal operatives to possible unknown contacts in Malaysia, the FBI and CIA sought to develop more information about the other people at the meeting. Early in 2001, more intelligence was developed that strengthened the hypothesis that this key planner had been one of the participants in the January 2000 meeting with al-Mihdhar and al-Hazmi. At the time, the focus was on the USS Cole investigation and on understanding what had occurred in Malaysia, not on whether these individuals had been watch listed. In mid-summer,
That's right. That's the CIA's fault. Why didn't they tell the State Department, who would have put them on the tip-off list, and they would have been watch listed right off the bat, but they didn't? Question is why? Well, that question came up during the investigation into, the interviews of Tom Wilshire, Cofer Black, the director of the Counterterrorism Center, and director of the CIA DCI, George Tenet, and they all gave conflicting answers.
2001, although the presence of the key planner in Malaysia had yet to be confirmed, while burrowing through intelligence related to other terrorist activity in Malaysia, the data from January 2000 and January 2001 was put together in a different way. And both the FBI and the CIA began to work to flesh out their understanding of all the people linked to the key planner of the Cole attack.
There was a number of people at this meeting. It's a high-level Al-Qaeda summit meeting that was held in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, between January 5th and 7th of 2000. A number of people like, of course, Khalid al-Mihdhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, Nawaf al-Hazmi's brother, Salim al-Hazmi, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the alleged organizer and planner of September 11, 2001, Ridwan Isamuddin, who goes by the Nam de Gwar Hambali, a co-leader of the Jemaah Islamiyah, a radical Salafist Islamic sect based in Indonesia, which has links to Abu Sayyaf, another terrorist group in the Philippines, which has links to Al-Qaeda. Fahad al-Quso, who is allegedly part of the USS Cole bomb, and a couple of others. And the person who owned the condominium was a Malaysian businessman by the name of Yazid Sufat.
Of all the people linked to Khalad. In the course of that work, in mid-August 2001, CIA and FBI learned that al-Mihdhar had entered the US in January 2000, departed at a later date, and then re-entered in July 2001.
Khalid al-Mihdhar left to go back to Yemen because his wife was pregnant. She gave birth. He left without telling Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and he was, according to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he was very displeased and was going to pull off the Khalid al-Mihdhar from leaving. And bin Laden overruled him, told him no, let him go see his wife, and he basically went back. And still, no watch list, no nothing. He gets in and out of the country, and still the CIA doesn't tell the FBI. Still.
CTC notified a number of agencies officially within a short time, and the FBI began an investigation to backtrack from al-Midhar's immigration documents in an effort to find him.
Right. When they told him August of 2001, when they should have told him January of 2000, when they find out through the photographs that Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, and according to officials, the CIA also had photographs of Nawaf al-Hazmi's passport, which had a dual U.S. visa. In fact, both men had dual U.S. visas. Right there, they were coming to New York, right on the passport. Now it's a domestic issue. It's the FBI's case. But that's why the CIA doesn't tell them. And when they did try, when the FBI agents in Alec Station, the bin Laden Issue Station, Mark Rossini and Doug Miller, when they tried to warn headquarters in Washington, D.C. about what was read on the cable, the CIA prevented them from sharing that information. They have to get authorization for the CIA to share that information because it's CIA information. But they're told, we think the next attack is in Southeast Asia. You're not in charge of the operation now, right? Because if they believe the next operation is inside the United States, the FBI is in charge.
But he had not registered at the hotels indicated on his forms, and time ran out before other venues could be searched. How could these misses have occurred?
How could these misses have occurred? Well, basically, you, Tom Wilshire, you're the one who told Michelle Ann Casey to tell FBI case officers Mark Rossini and Doug Miller that they are not to share that information with the FBI. That Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi were coming to the United States, and both of them had dual U.S. visas. You told them that. You did. That's your fault.
I do not want to speculate to any great length about this at this point because I really don't have a definitive answer.
Yes, you do. You didn't share it. You didn't order. You ordered your liaison officer to tell them that they're not allowed to share that information. That's what you did.
But I should try to put the events into some kind of context. The events I summarized above took place in the context of a worldwide campaign that also focused on people we knew were trying to kill Americans. The CIA operators focused on the Malaysia meeting while it occurred. When it was over, they focused on other, more urgent operations against threats, real or assessed. Of the many people involved, no one detected that the data generated by this operation, the Malaysia meeting, crossed a reporting threshold, or if they did, they assumed that the reporting requirement had been met elsewhere. In a later session, officers who served in CTC after 9/11 will expand on the revisions and new training that have been put into place to reduce the chances of this happening again.
Yeah.
There are new types of watch lists and new very low thresholds for entering names onto them. They will be discussed by others more familiar with the details and the protocols. What I will say here is that new procedures and training aside, they are also the kinds of misses that happen when people, even very competent, dedicated people, such as the CIA officers and the FBI agents and analysts involved in all aspects of this story, are simply overwhelmed. The counterterrorism business often does not feature a large team going after a single target, but rather one or two officers juggling multiple activities against many people, simultaneously trying to make sense of what it means, which target deserves priority attention, and balancing the interests of multiple stations, liaison services, and U.S. agencies. I would like to say that we will get it right 100% of the time. In fact, we're in a business here where we have to get it right 100% of the time.
Yeah, right. Well, anyway, you had the information, okay? You had the information, the most important information of all. okay? You knew that two men who were involved with the USS Cole bombing and to some extent, the bombings of the US embassies in Tanzania and Kenya, you knew they were coming to the United States. You knew this because you were the ones tracking them from the meeting in Malaysia to the United States. And then it was Richard Blee, who's the deputy chief, who's the chief of Alec Station, number one, who basically went to a principals meeting and said, we lost track of them. Right? Because now they're coming to the United States. Well, guess who didn't? The NSA. The NSA didn't lose track of them. And they too didn't share that information with the State Department or the FBI. Okay. And now you guys basically weren't getting help from the NSA. So you had information and you hoarded the information and you didn't share with the FBI or the State Department. So there's a lot of blame going around here. And you're making excuses because you don't have to explain yourself. And maybe that's the reason why you or Director Tennant basically made this move, is the reason why Richard Blee and Michelle Ann Casey didn't show up to testify at either congressional inquiry, the 9/11 Commission or the Joint House, was because that they were the ones giving the orders who were in charge of Alec Station, that's Richard Blee, and in operations of the Yemen hub where Khalid al-Mihdhar was staying, that's Michelle Ann Casey. So what I guess DCI Director Tennant do? He went and sent them to Afghanistan to replace the head of the jawbreaker operation, Gary Bernstein, when he was just a day or two away from capturing or killing Osama bin Laden. There's no reason to replace Gary Bernstein. The call came in to the head of the Special Activities Division, Hank Crumpton, which I'm assuming that's Tennant, and said that we're replacing Gary with Rich, right? Richard Blee. And the people at Jawbreaker Operation basically protested, said, why are they changing this now? Gary made great strides against Al-Qaeda and Taliban and decimated them in weeks, something that the earlier predecessor, Gary Schroen, another legendary CIA field officer, couldn't do because he was not getting any help from the Afghans. No need to replace him. But they did because they didn't have to testify at either inquiry.
Because the animal only has to get it right once. While I can't promise that we'll ever completely reach that goal of perfection, I have no doubt that those working in counterterrorism will never stop trying to get there. And I'll just add a little statement that's not in my prepared statement. We appreciate the help. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of Tom Wilshire and his bull crap excuses. Now the next guy is Steve Bongardt. Steve Bongart's the real deal. And he is a former special agent of the Joint Terrorism Task Force in New York City.
Mr. Rollins.
Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, Michael Rolnice, the Assistant Director, Counterterrorism. He's going to speak, and he's not hiding behind a partition. Steve Bongardt is sitting next to Tom Wilshire. He'll speak last.
Before I begin my prepared remarks, I would just like to say for the record that I am honored and proud to follow an individual with whom I worked closely for the last several years and whom I consider to be one of the finest counterterrorism experts in the world. Mr. Chairman, members of the committees, I'm pleased to appear before you today to describe the FBI's role within the intelligence community and our knowledge and actions from approximately December 1999 through September 11th, 2001. My testimony will cover the knowledge of and actions taken by the FBI prior to September 11th, 2001 regarding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, as well as information learned about them after the attack. I will touch upon the issue of the FBI's investigation of al-Mihdhar as an intelligence case versus a criminal target. I will discuss the interaction between the FBI and CIA as well as others in the intelligence and law enforcement community. I would also like to provide an overview of the makeup of the international jihad movement and explain how it encompasses many groups and organizations to include bin Laden and the Al-Qaeda network. As members of the intelligence community, we have been asked to discuss the exchange and flow of information within the community and its impact into the events leading up to September 11th. In that context, we've also been asked to discuss specifically the investigative efforts into the two of the September 11th hijackers. The investigation into the activities of Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi illustrates with acute clarity that considerable individual effort and collective resources will not always result in a successful outcome.
Here's the problem, is that when the FBI was fully aware of who Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi was in August of 2001, now the FBI has to play catch up, right? So what the FBI do? Well, basically, their resources were really thin. And so they decided to put one agent in charge of trying to find Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. And this was disaster. And the guy's name is Steve Bongardt. He's a fresh agent in the Counterterrorism Center, doesn't have much in the way of experience with counterterrorism. He's made to go and find Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi somewhere in the United States. And he's running through their names in the databases. The names are not in the databases because they're not put on the watch list. In immigration, naturalization services are not aware up until this point. They later become aware when they're on the tip-off list later.
Standing the improvements over the last few years within the intelligence community and exchanging personnel and information, and despite the extensive work performed by many individuals, the various intelligence community agencies, and the war on terrorism, the desired goal to protect our country was not realized. We have all learned that isolated events and unintentional incidents of inaction do not remain in a vacuum. Individually and certainly collectively, they have consequences. Through a collaborative effort within the community, the CIA received information that a meeting of individuals possibly associated with Osama bin Laden's terrorist network took place in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in early January 2000. Among those attending the meeting were Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, along with the key UBL operative Khalid. At the time al-Midhar and al-Hazmi were arriving in Malaysia, the CIA advised the FBI of their interest in these two individuals and indicated they would keep the FBI advised of further developments if warranted. In March 2000, the CIA received information concerning the re-entry or the entry of al-Midhar and al-Hazmi into the United States. In January 2001, the CIA obtained information which indicated a key individual associated with the USS Cole bombing had also attended the aforementioned Malaysia meeting. This was important because it placed al-Midhar and al-Hazmi in direct contact with a key operative of UBS.
And the CIA knew this and still withheld that information to the FBI. God sake, unbelievable.
During the spring and summer of 2001, analytical personnel from the CIA and FBI were working together to pursue avenues into the bombing of the USS Cole. On August 23rd, 2001, the CIA advised FBI HQ that on June 13th, 2001, al-Midhar obtained a U.S. visa in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, using a Saudi Arabian passport and provided his intended address as the Marriott Hotel, New York City. This visa was valid until October 3rd, 2001. The same day, the FBI received a copy of a CIA communication to watch list al-Midhar. This information was emailed to FBI.
Yeah, now you watch list. Way too late, right? You should have done that back in January of 2000 when you knew that he was coming from a high-level Al-Qaeda summit meeting in Malaysia. The CIA knew this. This is the big issue, right? You knew they were at this meeting. You knew they were meeting with the high-level Al-Qaeda operatives. Right there should have been where you watch listed. Put them on the tip-off list. Give it to the INS. You give it to FAA, State Department, and the Department of Justice. CIA withheld that information from them.
FBI New York on August 24th, 2001. On August 24th, 2001, FBI HQ received a copy of al-Midhar's visa application from the United States Embassy.
August 24th, 2001. They finally get the visa application of Khalid. 2 weeks later, 2 weeks prior to the attacks. Way too late. Can you imagine trying to find these two guys somewhere in the United States and you have, they don't know when the date is, but they're like, frantically trying to run around, finding out who this guy is, where they are.
in Saudi, indicating Al-Midhar had sponsored his own travel to the United States. The application listed Al-Midhar's plans to remain for 1 month to depart August 4th, 2001. Subsequent information received from INS determined Al-Midhar re-entered the United States on July 4th, 2001 on a B-1 visa, flying to New York City, and that he would stay at the Marriott Hotel in New York. This information was immediately relayed verbally to the CIA and FBI New York. On August 27th, 2001, headquarters verbally advised New York of the information contained in the headquarters email to FBI New York on August 24th, 2001, and further informed FBI New York that headquarters strongly suggested the initiation of a full intelligence investigation to locate and fully identify the individual. The FBI possessed no information relevant to Al-Midhar's possible involvement in a terrorist attack, but focused on Al-Midhar because he had attended a meeting with a key individual associated in the USS Cole bombing.
And you would have had that information from the CIA if they shared it with you, or the NSA.
On August 28th, 2001, a full briefing was provided to FBI New York in order to initiate that full field investigation to locate and identify Al-Midhar. On August 30, 2001, FBI agents contacted security for the Marriott Corporation, which agreed to do a search of all guests registered at the Marriott hotels in the entire New York metropolitan area. On September 5th, 2001, they advised their search for Al-Midhar was negative. On September 10th, 2001, based upon previously received intelligence, a lead was sent to FBI Los Angeles to conduct a similar search with the security officer of the Sheraton Corporation. This lead was not covered until after September 11th attacks and was also negative. As you're probably aware, there was a debate between headquarters and the FBI New York personnel on whether to open an intelligence or criminal investigation on Khalid Al-Midhar. There are two important points to be made in response to this issue. First, the decision to handle Al-Midhar investigation as an intelligence investigation was made under procedures which were designed to prevent terrorist acts. Second, although it is not uncommon to open a parallel criminal investigation, we did not have specific, credible evidence of criminal activity to do so.
Because that information was withheld from you by the CIA. CIA has information regarding Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi being involved with two terrorist events, the USS Cole bombing and the bombings of the US embassies in Africa. Okay, that information was withheld from you. You didn't know that at the time because the CIA withheld that information from you.
Restrictions of intelligence agencies and foreign services and the sharing of information within our agency limited the free flow of that information.
Yeah.
This contributed to our inability to pull together related information.
There you go.
It was frequently difficult to obtain the originating agency's concurrence to pass the information to criminal investigators, even for lead purposes. In terrorism cases, this became so complex and convoluted that in some FBI field offices, FBI agents perceived walls where none actually existed. In fact, one New York supervisor commented that, quote, so many walls had created a maze, unquote, which made it very difficult for the criminal investigators. Internally, the FBI adheres to the restrictions and caveats placed on intelligence information by the originating agency or foreign services. The need for these restrictions and caveats to protect sources and methods of intelligence information is obvious and needs no further explanation. Routinely, intelligence agencies evaluate their disseminable information to determine whether protection beyond basic classification are required. If caveats are required, such as originator control or ORCON, the classified information remains under the control of the originating agency. The FBI is prohibited from disclosing information originally classified by another agency without its authorization. At times, criminal investigators are also frustrated by wall procedures imposed by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. And a class by itself, FISA information is controlled by statute. Although the statute does not preclude the passing of information to criminal investigators, there are restrictions on the use of the information.
And this was an issue during the Zacharias Moussaoui case, right? Minneapolis field agent Harry Samet basically acting on information from a flight school about some guy, acting and asking suspicious questions. So they open up a file on Zacharias Moussaoui. They go in and detain him. Then they arrest him on suspicions of committing a terrorist act of air piracy. right, with intentions to kill people. Now, there was another person that was arrested with him. His name was Hussein Al-Atas, and they were arrested in Minneapolis. And they tried to open a FISA warrant. Now, they can't look at their possessions because they're not U.S. citizens, right? So they're foreign citizens. So they have to get what they call a FISA warrant, right? A FISA warrant relating to a warrant of foreign nationals. But the FISA warrant regarding Zacchaeus Moussaoui wasn't approved because people at the radical fundamentalist unit, like Mike Maltby and Dave Frasca, basically, and of course, Marion Bowman, the head of the RFU, basically said that you guys basically misconstrued the investigation or the application itself. The wording isn't legitimate, and there was certain disagreements about the definitions of said words, like jihad and stuff like that. It was a big issue, and the agents are like, what the heck? Here's a guy who basically is coming from, and by the way, you have French authorities who are basically faxing information about Zacchaeus Moussaoui, saying this guy's dangerous. He's involved with a known terrorist here named Abu Musab al-Masri, Abu Hamza al-Masri. He's a guy with he doesn't have hands. He has like hooks, and he has like one eye. Looks like a real Bond villain. He's currently doing life here in the United States. So he's from the mosque there. So with this intelligence, that's more than enough to approve of a FISA warrant. No, radical fundamentalist unit, the whole issue was so complicated that they didn't get to open up Zacchaeus Moussaoui's laptop or search the belongings inside the hotel room which they were staying. It was a big issue with the FBI.
The FISA court and the Department of Justice have been cautious through the years of permitting intelligence and criminal investigators to become closely associated for fear their cooperation would be interpreted as an attempt to circumvent the criminal process. Accordingly, the FBI.
It's amazing. There was a lot of people, I hear a lot of people, especially in the truth movement, say, well, they're the FBI, they're basically in on it. There were so many whistleblowers with the FBI pre 9/11 intelligence. So many FBI, and I'm so, privileged to interview some of them. Mark Rossini, for one. Ken Williams, who wrote the Phoenix Memo, who tried to warn the FBI about known radical fundamentalists in flight schools in Arizona, training to try to fly planes, and crashed them. Robert Wright Jr., Volga betrayal operation, investigation into Hamas and other terrorist groups that were operating in the early 90s. Colleen Rowley of the Harry Salmon of Minneapolis. Doug Miller, FBI in New York. John O'Neill, he's not a whistleblower, but, great, fantastic agents. Frank Pellegrino, Jack Clunan, Ali Soufan. Man, I mean, a good number of these FBI agents who had really good intentions about wanting to stop the terrorist group Al-Qaeda from conducting terrorist operations. And they were all prevented to do so. Some were threatened with legal ramifications, even jail. And that's what they did to Mark Rossini and Doug Miller regarding the cable about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wafa Hazmi's U.S. visas and coming to the United States. They weren't allowed to share that information.
Has been required to maintain a certain degree of separation between intelligence and criminal investigators. With the enactment of the Patriot Act after September 11th, it is much clearer that the sharing of information is.
Steve Bongardt's another. He fought tooth and nail to try and get, whatever little information the CIA was. He was like in arguments with them on the phone and emails. God's sakes, he tried to warn, he tried to get as much intelligence as he could, but he was stonewalled. They're promising, yeah, we'll share you information because he's heard about Khalid al-Mihdhar through 2 meetings with a CIA analyst who later was known to be Clark Shannon of the counterterrorism unit. He's not getting anywhere with them. They're not sharing information with him about the hijackers inside the United States. And Bongardt didn't know until the August meeting.
Government policy issue. Some procedures were relaxed and the policy to share was codified. Post-Patriot Act, the only sharing obstacles relate to the possibility of prosecutorial control over the FISA process. By court order, the FBI is prohibited from discussing a substantive FISA issue with prosecutors unless the Department of Justice, Office of Intelligence Policy and Review, is invited to participate. The same requirement does not pertain to contact between intelligence and criminal agents, although criminal agents cannot control the FISA or the FISA process. Mr. Chairman, the remainder of my statement as regards the international jihad movement will be submitted for the record. In the interest of time, that concludes my oral remarks, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rollins. The FBI agent.
Okay, now the FBI agent is Steve Bongardt. Okay, he's from the New York. He's a former special agent of the Joint Terrorism Task, Joint Counterterrorism.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman Shelby, Ranking Member Pelosi, and members of the committees. I'm a special agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation assigned to the New York field office. I appreciate your invitation to appear before your committees today in connection with your joint inquiry into the tragic events of September 11, 2001. I fully understand the responsibility with which you have been charged. I intend to cooperate with you and answer your questions to the best of my ability. I am speaking to you today as an individual agent. The views I express, therefore, are my own, not necessarily those of the FBI, although I believe that my concerns are shared by many fellow agents. I hope by appearing here today that I might, in some small way, to assure the men and women of the FBI and others in the intelligence community have access to the information necessary to carry out their sworn duty to protect the people of the United States. I have no wish in the remarks that follow to be critical of any person, whether they are at FBI headquarters or in the field. FBI personnel work their hearts out to perform their mission. I am before you today to address practices that frustrate us all. Much has been written about how the FBI does not share information with local law enforcement agencies, but the American people must realize that the FBI does not always have access to the information itself, nor is all the information the FBI possesses available to all of its agents. It is my belief that the former problem is due to fear that the Bureau may run ahead or mess up current or future operations of one of our sister agencies, and the latter primarily due to decisions that have snowballed out of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA court. A concept known as the wall has been created within the law enforcement and intelligence communities. From my perspective, in the broadest sense, the wall is an information barrier placed between elements of an intelligence investigation and those of a criminal investigation. In theory, again, same perspective. It is there to ensure that we, the FBI, play by the rules in our attempts to gather evidence in a criminal case in federal prosecution. I've tried to write this statement knowing full well that its contents and my testimony will be studied by the enemy. Along those lines, much detail has been left out, and if I may, humbly remind everyone that questions regarding sources, other possible operations, investigative methods in this forum should be approached with extreme caution. As an aside, may I say, I firmly believe prevention is best served by allowing the law enforcement community, federal and local, to conduct sound, sometimes exigent investigations with access to all information that the U.S. government and liaison governments possess. These investigations build sources, evidence, connections, and information, and are not simply reactive. I would like to assure the American people that in my almost 7 years in the Bureau, the FBI has always been in the prevention, if I may, game. Before going further, I would like to offer a few words of introduction so you're aware of the background that I bring to the questions before the committee. Between 1985 and 1993, I served in the military. After a brief stint in the private sector, I joined the FBI in December 1995 and was assigned to the New York field office's Joint Terrorism Task Force in July 1996. From July 1996 through October 1997, I served on the TWA Flight 800 investigation. On October 1997, I was assigned to the squad that had responsibilities for Taliban and Pakistan matters. Following the East Africa embassy bombings in August 1998, I was part of the first team on the ground, spending a cumulative total of over 30 weeks abroad investigating the bombings. In early 1999, I joined the New York field office's overall Osama bin Laden case squad, which is responsible for the overall investigation of UBL and Al-Qaeda. Immediately after the attack on the USS Cole in Aden, Yemen on October 12, 2000, I was assigned as one of the case agents and worked on that case, Aden bomb, until the attacks of September 11, 2001.
And that investigation was impeded because the U.S. ambassador to Yemen, Barbara Bodine, basically did not like the lead of the counterterrorism unit in New York, John O'Neill. John O'Neill is a brilliant intelligent mind. He was killed when the plane crashed into I believe he was in the North Tower, and he was killed on September 11, 2001. But my goodness, John O'Neill was one of the very initial agents who knew that after the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, he knew that there was a bigger network of terrorists operating inside and outside the United States. And at that time, the FBI was like completely new to Arab fundamentalism. After the 93 bombing, they became the preeminent organization, I think, in the United States. Just no one, not even the CIA, they were the best analytical minds, some of the best agents, Jack Clunan, John Antisev, Frank Pellegrino, Steve Bongardt later, Ali Soufan later. Just a bunch of remarkable agents, Mark Rossini, Doug Miller, and I could go on, Margaret Gillespie, Dina Corsi, and just a ton of others. Ed Getz is another, and I could go on. So they had this core group of guys and gals, and basically concentrating on Islamic radical fundamentalism and the connections within. And they are one of the few agencies who got to know the intricate details of Al Qaeda, because in 1996, there was an Al Qaeda informant who basically gave himself up. And he was there when Al Qaeda first formed. And his name was Jamal al-Fawqi. And he gave the FBI, a treasure trove of information that nobody had. Nobody.
Since then, I have also worked on general UBL matters and have been deployed 12 weeks overseas, working alongside other intelligence community components. I mention this fact because although there are issues about the sharing of information with FBI investigators by the CIA, my experience between the FBI and the intelligence community is that we have worked successfully together. The people of the United States should take great pride in the service and sacrifice of the men and women of all the U.S. agencies and DoD deployed overseas, many of whom I've had the privilege of working with overseas. Briefly, the wall and implied, interpreted, created, or assumed restrictions regarding it prevented myself and other FBI agents working a criminal case out of New York field office from obtaining information from the intelligence community regarding Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi in a meeting on June 11th, 2001.
That's right. This is the first meeting. Now, the FBI officer, there was FBI agents who were tasked to work at the CIA's analytical station, the Bin Laden Issue Station, Alec Station. Some of them I mentioned before: Mark Rossini, Doug Miller, Margaret Gillespie, Ed Getz, and later Jack Clunan worked at the Counterterrorism Center. So Margaret Gillespie is getting friendly with some of the CIA analytical officers there, like Alfreda Ambikowski, Michelle Ann Casey. They basically give her photographs of Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. She only knows them by their first name, but she's told not to let the FBI. She basically says, go back to New York and meet with them and see if they know who the people are in this picture. Now, this is a classic, perfect definition of phishing, where the CIA is phishing the FBI to see what they know and what they don't know. So she went and met with Steve Bongardt and said, and Dina Corsi, I think, and showed them the pictures. Hey, do you know who these people are? And Steve Bongardt said, who are they? And why the FBI is following them? She goes, I don't know who they are. And they had a huge, slight argument regarding, why she doesn't know who they are and why the CIA won't tell them. But then there was a second meeting. This time, it was the CIA analytical officer, Clark Shannon, right? Clark Shannon basically says the people in the picture are Khalid al-Midhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi. But what he doesn't tell Steve Bongardt, most important information of all, that they're inside the United States and they both had US visas. Now, why? Because the FBI, if he does tell him that, the FBI basically could put them on the watch list and they could start monitoring them inside the United States. What else could it be? What other reason could it be to withhold this information? Well, basically, there's a rumor that's saying that the CIA were trying to turn them as agents, That's the reason why they didn't tell the FBI. They don't speak English. How are you going to turn them as double agents? Well, according to certain CIA officials, they were going to allow the Saudi kingdom, the GID, the General Intelligence Directorate, headed by Prince Turki bin Faisal, to control them. And Faisal and the CIA were working hand to hand. That I don't disagree. They might be. I think they were. Okay. To what extent? Couldn't tell you. I think they were, for sure.
At the time, there was reason to believe that al-Midhar and al-Hazmi had met with a suspect connected to the attack against the USS Cole. The situation came to a head during the fourth week of August 2001, when, after it was learned that al-Midhar was in the country, FBI HQ representatives in the FBI New York said that FBI New York was compelled to open an intelligence case, and that I nor any of the other criminal case investigators assigned to track al-Qaeda could attempt to locate him.
Can you believe it? Like, how do you feel? If you're Steve Bongardt, you'd be like, I'm enraged, right? Why am I not getting no cooperation from the CIA about this? They obviously know who these guys are. I mean, that's obvious from his meeting with Clark Shannon, right? Can I get any information? He's basically telling people at Alec Station, hey, can you provide us with any more additional information? Yeah, we'll share with you, and they never do, given the runaround.
This resulted in a series of emails between myself and the FBI HQ analyst working the matter. In my emails, I asked where this new wall was defined. I wrote on August 29, 2001, whatever has happened to this, someday, someone will die.
Yeah, and that's the email going to Dina Corsi, right? And he's not getting help from her either. And let's hear what he says here.
Wall or not, the public will not understand why we were not more effective in throwing every resource we had at certain problems. Let's hope the National Security Law Unit will stand behind their decisions then, especially since the biggest threat to us now, UBL, is getting the most protection. I was told in response that we at headquarters are all frustrated with this issue. These are the rules. NSLU does not make them up.
Right, man, right? So here you have someone from the law national working in the law division of the FBI, Dina Corsi, who's basically telling her an employee of the Joint New York City Task Force Counterterrorism Unit, saying that, hey, listen, we can't press the issue because there are certain rules in place, and we're getting all the help we can get by the CIA. No, you're not. Right? There are two guys who basically have connections to a terrorist organization in which the CIA back in 1998, under the DCI, George Tenet, who publicly announced they were at war with, right? Here's a threatening foreign agent, foreign organization that is operating out of Afghanistan by a known terrorist financier in Osama bin Laden. And the best they could do is an intelligence investigation, and not a criminal one, on Khalid al-Midhar. And they're basically looking for a needle in the haystack because they're not getting any cooperation from the NSA or the CIA.
I hope, Mr. Chairman, these proceedings are a time to break down the barriers and change the system, which makes it difficult for all of us, whether we work at FBI HQ or in the field at the FBI or elsewhere, to have and be able to act on information that we need to do our jobs. Personally, I do not hold any U.S. government affiliated individual or group of individuals responsible for the attacks on September 11, 2001. I truly believe that if given a chance, any one of them would give or sacrifice anything to prevent what occurred. Then and now, I hold the system responsible. Information is power in the system of intelligence and law enforcement.
Information is power. You could control the world leaders, kings and queens, with information. That's why the most powerful entities on earth are the intelligence communities. The CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the British MI6, the British CGBQ, the Israeli Mossad, the Pakistan ISI, the Soviet KGB, some of the most powerful entities on the face of the earth.
This will never change, nor could or should it. In addition to the wall, the system as it currently exists, however, seduces some managers, agents, analysts, and officers into protecting turf and being the first to know and brief those above. Often these sadly mistaken individuals use the wall described herein and others, real and imagined, to control that information. I myself still have two key questions today that I believe are important for this committee to answer. The detailed answers to them will deserve and be afforded the scrutiny of a nation and must stand the test of time and exhaustive investigation. First, if the CIA passed information regarding al-Midhar and al-Hazmi to the FBI prior to June 11, 2001, prior to that June 11, 2001 meeting in either January 2000 or January 2001, then why was that information not passed either by CIA or FBI headquarters personnel immediately to the New York case agents, criminal or intel, investigating the murder of 17 sailors in Yemen when more information was requested?
Boom. Oh, man. And sitting next to him is the man who withheld the information, Tom Wilshire. Oh, my God. Talk about a knockout punch. That's why I like the Steve Bongardt guy. Yeah, wow, right? Here's, and ironically, Tom Wilshire is actually tasked as a liaison officer to the New York's counterterrorism unit in, I think, in June of 2001 to work, of all things, the USS Cold bombing. Incredible. Incredible.
A simple answer to the wall is unacceptable. Second, how and when did we, the CIA and the FBI, learn that al-Midhar came into the country on either or both occasions in January 2000 and or in July 2001, and what did we do with that information?
Oh, there's another stab in the back, right? That would be Tom Wilshire. He's sitting right next to you, Steve. Basically, he's the one responsible for withholding information from the FBI. And the FBI, like I said, they read the cable concerning Khalid Nawaf al-Hazmi's passport, which had a dual U.S. visa, and they were coming inside the United States. And Tom Wilshire told his liaison officer, Michelle Ann Casey, tell them, don't pause per Wilshire. Please hold off. I'm sorry. Please hold off per Wilshire. So the cable that Doug Miller was going to draft to Washington headquarters, he couldn't send it on authorization from Tom Wilshire.
On September 11, 2001, I spent the morning on the streets with other agents and Joint Terrorism Task Force personnel around the World Trade Center, providing whatever help we could. I and several of my coworkers were within blocks when both towers came down. Within minutes of the second strike on the southern tower, we asked a senior fireman heading towards the south tower what we could do. At the time, he was getting out of his fire truck looking at the towers. By the grace of God, he turned to us and replied that he did not know what we could do, but that we were not going anywhere close to the buildings without a respirator.
Wow.
I do not know who he was, but I truly believed he saved our lives.
Yeah.
I also believe that based on the direction that he was looking towards the southern tower, the moments later, he entered that tower and perished in the attack. It's taken a while for a response, but I believe that the task before this committee, in some small way, me being here today, is what the brave fireman is telling us, all of us, what we can do. If we do not change the system, if we may say again, someday someone will die, and wall or not, the public will not understand why we're not more effective in throwing every resource we had at certain quote unquote problems. Thank you for this opportunity and privilege of appearing before you today. I would, of course, welcome your questions.
Okay, that's the end right there, right? So yeah, hey, that was a great ending right there. Two great questions to ask. And the guy who can basically answer them is sitting right next to him, Tom Wilshire, the former deputy chief of Alec Station, who withheld information about Khalid al-Midhar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, about Khalid, and about the meeting in Malaysia, about them having dual U.S. visas, about them being inside the United States, lied about it during the National Security Principles meeting when Richard Blee, the chief of Alec Station, basically told them, we lost track, we don't know where they are. They knew where they were. They were inside the United States. The question is, why did they withhold the information? Well, go listen to my previous podcast where I go into detail about why they withheld the information, because one of the leading members of the Joint House Inquiry, Carl Levin, basically asks that question and much more.
Thank you, sir.
So that would be it for this video.